You know, I've been thinking about mindset a lot lately, and not in the wake up at 4 a.m., cold showers, the hustle harder kind of mindset. I mean, how do you actually stay mentally healthy when life doesn't look the way you thought it would? Because if you watch some of my previous videos, I'm 31, single, no job, trying to build a business, trying to build this YouTube channel, trying to work on some music and some of my hobbies, and ultimately just trying to figure out what my next chapter looks like. And I'll be honest, some days are really exciting. Some days I'm up in the moon and or in the clouds, so positive, so much positive energy, ready to explore the world and explore the new challenges. And other days, but not so much, some days I genuinely question whether I'm doing the right thing. And I think it's okay to question that sometimes and to reflect and see if this is the path you want to go on, and reassess at certain checkpoints, or if you're on a highway, on this particular highway of life that you've chosen, I think it's good to take a few stops, reassess, are you still going on the right path you want? And it feels like some days I'm at that crossing point, and some days I know this is the highway I'm on, and ultimately maybe that's part of life. But the problem, and something I've realized, when life becomes uncertain, your brain becomes very good at finding evidence to show that you're failing or you're not. And I think it's very easy to look for excuses. I think your brain does that. Maybe it's a survival mechanism, or maybe it's just self-doubt, and it could be many things, and I have no clue exactly what it is. But you start comparing yourself to others. You wonder why everyone else seems to be moving forward. People are buying houses, people are getting married, people have got kids on the way, people are ticking off all these milestones, and you're sitting here wondering, am I behind? Am I losing touch with everyone around me? And I think we've all been there. I'm sure you've been there, and I'm sure I'll always be there on and off throughout my life, and probably yourself as well. But I think the scary thing is, nothing in life has actually changed. Only the story that we're telling ourselves has. And that's why I think your mindset matters a lot. And common terms you might find out there is, you are what you think. And your thoughts can change you in a good and positive way. But I think that's why mindset matters a lot. Now, I don't think it's going to magically fix all our problems, but I think it carries a lot of weight and can really help. Now, the first lesson I want to take from our mindset, or how to think a bit more clearly and reassess what we're doing, is telling yourself that a season or a period of your life isn't your identity, or isn't an identity. For example, just because I'm unemployed today doesn't mean I'm unemployable. I've had work for pretty much most of my life. Just because I'm single now doesn't mean I'm unlovable. And I think when change happens in your life, you find these excuses to almost talk down to yourself in a way. Now, I think we also have this habit of turning a temporary situation into permanent labels. And I think that's dangerous. And I think that can be quite harming. And that's not to take away how bad someone's situation is, whether it's yours, mine, anyone's. But because I think once you believe in the label, you start acting like it's true. And I think that's very powerful in a positive and a negative way. The second lesson I want to talk about is I'm trying to learn to keep promises to myself. And that's something I've struggled with so much. And an easy example, and you've probably felt the same way, is that you might promise yourself, I'll wake up at 4 in the morning to go to the gym before work, get all my exercise done, and you just don't wake up. And I think that's a classic example. Whether it's a diet example, whether it's a commitment to working a bit harder, seeing a bit more family, seeing a bit more friends, these promises you make to yourself, and those are some big ones, and there's some small ones out there too, whether it's you're doing the dishes or reading that book or doing the laundry, let's say. All these tiny promises, and especially the tiny ones, can have quite a big impact. And if I tell myself I'm going to film a video, for example, I film the video. And I'm not perfect to that, and I'm still new to creating this type of conversational content for people. But little things like that, if I say I'm going to apply for a job, apply for the job. If I say I'm going to go to the gym, go to the gym. Because I think the confidence you get from doing the activity, you can build a lot of momentum. I don't think it comes from, just positive affirmations. I think the confidence comes from evidence of you doing it. And if you don't do it, you're never going to do it. And if you go to the gym one day, I think you build a bit of momentum to the next day you go to the gym, or you apply for one job, you build a bit more momentum. And when you make these promises to yourself that you're going to do something, the more you don't do it, the bigger the beast feels like. And I think once you tackle the first step, your mindset quickly changes. Well, for me anyways, it changes in the way of that activity or that promise I made to myself wasn't actually as bad as what I had in my head. Look, the third lesson I wanted to talk about is feelings are important, but they are terrible leaders. And this is something I face with all the time. I'm a classic overthinker. I like to think a lot about things, and then probably my anxiety gets up and I get a bit nervous and excited at the same time, and I might act on that. And I think a good level of excitement and nerves are great, but taking it and letting it lead, and I think calling it a terrible leader is a good term. Excuse me. Like, there are days I don't feel like creating. There's many days I don't feel like applying for a job. There's days I don't feel motivated to go to the gym. If I only moved when motivation showed up, nothing would ever happen. And there's a good term out there where, I forgot what the concept is, but it was, it was around motivation and discipline, and ultimately motivation rarely comes. And if you're gonna wait for motivation, it just never does, and it never does give you that spark to go do it. Now I'm learning that feelings deserve to be listened, but they don't always deserve the final decision. And that's kind of my experience, and maybe I'll learn a bit more from that by practicing it, and I'll take some lessons from there and come back to you guys. But sometimes you simply just have to do the thing anyway. Little things like doing the laundry, big things like going to the gym or applying for the job or whatever task you're currently tackling. The fourth lesson, and this one has probably helped me the most, and it's focus on what you can control, and control the controllable is I think a common term I've heard. I think Alex Hormozi talk about it, and many other influencers and businessmen, and whether it's like therapists out there, but it's really control the controllable. I can't control who gives me a job, but I can control how many applications I put out there. I can't control who dates me, but I can control how much I put myself out there and how much I work on myself. I can't control whether, this YouTube video performs, but I can try to formulate a good conversation and a good video that brings a bit of value for people and maybe answers a question. And I think that's the give and take. I can't control whether someone likes me, whether a friend or a friend of a friend or a work colleague or someone at the coffee shop or even the barista at the coffee shop or the person taking your order or the person at JB Hi-Fi. I can't control whether they like you or not. And I think a lot of these things give me a bit of peace because there is a lot we can't control. At the same time, there's a lot we can. And if I just focus my energy on the controllables, there's a bit of hope involved as well. I'd hope that something will land eventually. And I think in time it'll tell. And I think it's a better mindset than thinking about the uncontrollable. And I think it's the more positive mindset to have. With the one last note about the controllable is that I can control whether I show up to something, and showing up to something, for example, like having an interview for a job, or let's say you got a project deadline. Showing up is not just rocking up and just being present. And I think you know yourself what showing up means, and for everyone that's a bit different. But I always like the analogy of, I forgot who said it. Maybe it was Alex Hormozy, or it was on a Chris Williamson podcast, I think. But it was saying that, I'm going to butcher this, but the concept was your better self was sitting in the room next to you, waiting for you. I got to look it up again. But ultimately, what I took away from it is that you kind of know what your showing up self is, or your better self is, or the promised person you want to be. It's just sitting in the next room. You just got to walk in and take charge. But you can control whether you stay kind, you keep trying, you be a good person, and learn from the mistakes. And that's something that's kind of helped my mindset, and something I'll always do is, as hard as it is to accept sometimes, I am just human, and I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. And it's how we control our mindsets and actions moving forward. The last lesson I wanted to talk about is discipline doesn't need to be loud. I think social media makes discipline look so dramatic. Early mornings, ice baths, perfect routines. But I think discipline is sometimes just quietly doing the boring thing. And you can make an argument discipline is always just doing the boring thing. And it can be as simple as making your bed, going for a walk, sending an email, recording a video, cleaning the kitchen, doing the laundry. Essentially choosing not to quit today. And I think that's discipline too. And I don't think discipline has to be this grand gesture of multiple activities. I think discipline can be this small activities of making your bed. And I think Jordan Peterson, he says something along the lines of you should always clean your room, or the concept is clean your room first. If your life's a bit of a mess, clean your room first. And I've always enjoyed that. When my room gets messy, when my house gets messy, I feel like my life is messy. And for me, maybe that's my personality type, where if my house is messy, I feel like my mind's a bit of a mess. I feel like I'm unorganized. But once I clean up the house, I feel like I can think clearly. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And maybe you're the same. Lesson number 6 for your mental mind, or a good mindset, is comparison. And honestly, this one still gets me to date. I feel like there was a period of my life where I didn't really care about comparison, but ultimately, deep down as humans, I think we always compare. ourselves to everyone else in the world. And social media probably doesn't help, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, seeing everyone doing amazing things. And for a second, you start questioning your own journey. And I think that's where social media can be a bit toxic if you don't remove yourself and have the mindset not to compare. But someone else's success doesn't mean or doesn't take away from mine. And it ties into the other, I think it was the first mindset, was around the timelines. And that's their timeline and this is my timeline, and a season doesn't define your identity. I'm only competing with myself, and I'm only competing with the person I was yesterday. And as long as you, what's the saying? As long as you're better 1% than yesterday, then in 100 days you'll be 100% better than you were. It's not perfect, but I think it's quite motivating to think about that. If you didn't do the laundry yesterday, well, how about you do the laundry today? If you didn't go to the gym yesterday, just go to the gym today. You went to the gym yesterday, okay, maybe do some yoga as well on top of that, or maybe eat healthy. And I think that's where the compounding really helps. Now, the last lesson that I've written down here is, and it probably is the biggest thing, it's to keep moving. And even if it's slow, even if nobody in the world notices, because progress doesn't always look exciting. And in reality, progress almost never looks exciting, right? It's all about the prestige of the end goal. But something is progress. Uploading one video, writing one song, applying for a job, having one difficult conversation that's been on your mind, calling that friend, going to the gym. I'm using gym and some examples quite frequently, just because it's more related to my own personal life. But it could be anything. It could be going for a swim. It could be playing soccer. It could be maybe painting a canvas that you've been thinking about. It could be any sort of activity, reading a book. But moving and continuing to move, I think, is very valuable, and having that mindset of tackling one thing at a day, one thing at a time, and one thing a day is valuable. And sometimes that's enough. And I think sometimes that can just be everything. And I think if you think about it, like logically, if you do something sometimes every single day, you all of a sudden do that every single day. I don't know if that makes sense as I talk about it, but something's always better than nothing. And I think that's probably the last lesson I'm trying to take out of mindset today. And hopefully that's something you can take. Maybe I think it was 6 or 7 lessons on the list. I'm not perfect in adhering to all those lessons, but I think if you keep them in mind, I think that can help you build a really good mindset. Now, when I reflect on this video and this conversation today, do I have my mindset figured out? Not even close. Not even close. I'm still going to overthink. I'm still going to compare. I'm still going to doubt myself. I'm still going to have bad days. But I think it's realizing that is okay. It's not the end of the world if I have those bad days, because mindset isn't about becoming fearless. It's about having something to come back to when it gets difficult, to put you back on the right path. And it's not about perfection. It's just some resilience. But ultimately, that's kind of my thoughts about mindset. I would love to hear about any of your thoughts and what your strategies are and what lessons you've learned, if there's something different than what we've spoken about today, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below. But yeah, I'll have to end the video there and catch you guys next time.